Hello everyone, welcome back to another Bitwig 2.3 beta video. So in this video, we're going to just look at some new changes to just how the devices work a little bit. We're not going to look at phase 4, but we're going to look at the original devices we've already had, but we're going to see that now we have a full screen view by just clicking on the what used to be the plug-in open icon symbol. So now it's like you click it and it full screens your polysynth. So you can see your waves close up basically when you play them and how they move in phase every time you click this button right here, because there's like a random start. So like everything's gonna keep moving every time I click it. It starts different oscillations. Cool. Something that's also new, besides being able to full screen, we can look at all the things we can also full screen in a second, is voice stacking, which I've had a lot of questions being asked about, and a lot of people are very curious about it. Now, how voice stacking works is it only works with Bitwig native devices. And from what I've learned by using it is that it essentially duplicates your sound outside of the plugin or the parameters you're working in. So if I have my polysynth, I basically add an extra voice, and in this case, I actually have mine edited, so I'm gonna have to load the default preset here. If I add an extra voice, we can see nothing happens in the polysynth up here, but in the oscillator in the bottom corner, we're getting larger waves. If we were to go ahead and duplicate another one in here, unfreeze it, take off our voice stack, we can see we're getting additive synthesis here. So it's duplicating the wave that I have made. Now, using this method I'm doing here to see the additive synthesis, and that we're seeing as not changing, in fact, in polysynth's view here, it's not taking into account for the extra voices in this view. I don't know if it's supposed to or not. That doesn't really matter. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and actually change the waveform of one and see kind of what's happening here. So again, from what I can tell by using it, if I were to go ahead and take this voice stack, I open up a number 2 section. Now, if I take this and use it to modulate something, it's going to move it to that final point with the rest of the settings still the same. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and tell it to make only square sounds on the second voice. And I want it to be all the way to the right. Oops, by 1, or should it be 2 actually? And I'll make the first voice all the way to the left. So I'll unclick that again. And by default, our first voice is going to be whatever's just here. So move this to the left and I'll have on 1 voice. We can hear it in the left only right now. And then I'll put this to left and right like so. Let's do it this way instead actually. There we go. So we're getting our saw wave over here in the right ear. Now, if I turn on my second voice, we hear a square in the right and a saw on the left, and then we'll be able to see this here. Perfect. So we see how this is working now. And if I go ahead and take my tool and actually tell it to eliminate my left side by panning to the right, we only hear the square. Only saw wave. So what voicing has done is it's playing my synth with all the same settings except for the one thing I have changed, which is the square wave. And I've changed it by saying, let's actually move it 2 points to the right on the panner. And then I'm saying play oscillator 2 instead of 1 basically, because it's at that point right here. This point is where it is. The in-between doesn't really matter. So essentially any changes I make are going to be heard, but the rest of everything is being duplicated. What this basically means is that we can come in here and use these voices instead of having multiple devices layered in a device layer. We don't really need to do that anymore because we can just do it in the voice stack. Now, there should be, I'm assuming, a benefit of saving your CPU just a little bit when this is being done. So hopefully that's true. Also, we have a voicing limit here. So increase voicing limit. So if I just have my default synths running like this, and I'm going to go ahead, full screen it, pull down the limit to 1, have just 1 stack. chords cannot be played in this form. Meaning the maximum notes polysynth can perform is 32. So if I throw the stack up to 5, I can play all my 32 notes if I want, and it works just fine. So it's 32 times 5, and that's how it goes. So when you go ahead and take your limit down lower, it's not going to play your other stacks until you raise your number. So you could make unison, you could make detunes with like saw basses and a whole other sort of things. In our oscillator view here for the full screen, we have some wave modulators and we even have the sub modulator. So shape and sub can be modified. Oscillator mix, the mix knob can be changed. Up changes the actual balance, to the right adds noise. Here we can actually visually see our envelopes now, so we can go ahead and add in any sort of changes to it, and we can actually see how this is going to look on paper. EQ5 can be used in this manner now. We can have full screen view of what it is we are working with in terms of EQ, so if we want to make any precision EQing, it can be done. Pretty neat. Now, as we can see, my frame's not keeping up so well. I'm going to go ahead and call out my iMac AMD graphics card for this reason. It's not very good, so I'm going to presume that that's the issue in this. I'll be getting a very good laptop very shortly, and I'll actually come back and retest something about frames and if your GPU can actually increase your frames while producing. That'll be nice to look at. And we also get 2 spectrum views here. It doesn't just go away and give us more control. That I would like to see. I know it might feel copycatty because, you know, Ableton has it, but it just works if we had a little better control over all of our parameter knobs, not just these click and drag sort of numbers. That would be cool to have here. Also, mid-side option built into the EQ would be pretty nice, but we do have mid-side tool we could use for now. However, for the future, that would be real great. Also, some sort of visual indication of where the shift is being put, instead of just having to guess or watch your spectrum to look for the change or just not caring. It'd be nice if there was some more numbers up here to, you know, more specifically figure out where it is your lines are. However, I guess in the top right corner, we can actually see our scale and notes. Not our scale, but we can actually see the hertz and what note it is relative to 50 cents. That also works quite nicely, and I honestly cannot remember if that's a new feature or not. I think it is, so congrats on that, and thank you for that. We can also detach this, so it just feels like a whole separate EQ. That is super cool. We can't full screen it. It's at maximum size. We can drag it, make it small. Still can't full screen it. I think we can make it fairly big, but if you want to have it like, you know, just small and cute, you can throw it down. You can pin it back to where it is. I think this keeps it on top, so if I move tracks, it's not going to change. So now if we're doing mastering, this will make this quite nice for if you're trying to do mastering, but you're also trying to go through other tracks, do some little changes to certain instruments, but you want to see how your spectrum's being affected or your master EQ's being affected, you can still perform this. Or I can just have it set up this way. I change tracks. It should go away if I full screen this, or it even stays. What's the point of pinning that then? Is it so it stays on top? Pin this window, keeps it open even when switching tracks. So on the event that I switch tracks, it still stays open though. This could be for the setting where when you go into your preferences, you can actually tell it to close windows when you switch tracks. Or this could just be a glitch where, in my opinion, unless you have, it's because I don't have the setting on, I'm pretty sure. But if I turn on the setting where I'm like, if I switch tracks, close all the windows, it'll still do that. And unless I have it pinned, it should ignore that. I'm not going to test it, but if someone wants to test that, go ahead. I'm just going to assume it works. Spectrum Analyzer can be full screened. For all us spectrum analysts, Polysynth can also be detached in this manner if you want to do so. That is very neat. It's different from Ableton. That was a nice thing to throw in there just to be not better, but different. So that way people can't be like, oh, you're just copying Ableton, because you might have did that, but there's nothing innovative about full screening your devices anyways. That's just something that's like common need, common want. Like, it's just something that someone would have done anyways. It's not an innovative idea to be able to full screen, so I wouldn't call it stealing. But adding that nice little feature puts you that one extra step ahead in something that they don't have, but they also still have something that we don't have, which is when we full screen, we don't get any settings change. We just get a bigger window and still have the smaller window. Here's our sampler. Our sampler is the exact same from the previous update. And as I said it in the most previous video here, that I actually don't know, and I don't really have a way of confirming if the sampler has changed any sort of algorithms for pitch or any sort of time stretching or anything like that. So I'm going to assume that it's been updated to Elastic Pro instead of whatever the algorithm that Bitwig was using before. However, for the sampler, the previous algorithm worked fairly well. I was okay. I was pretty happy with the sampler. So if it's better, then it's better. If it's not, I'm not going to notice. So here we have instrument selector. And essentially the way this works is you just have multiple synths. You click a button. That's the one that becomes active. So up here, we can click and drag what we want to be selected. We can click this arrow key and we can automate it. So we can have instruments turn on and off and be in the same track, use the same MIDI, saves you space in your arrangement. You can do a whole ton of stuff. If you have a pad that changes per part, you can keep it inside of the Note FX or whatever, and you can have it turn on and off specific parts of the track. Just saves you space. Most useful thing it has is for live play. So that's nice. They're tailoring towards that. Nice little thing to throw in there just for some creative effect. So for whatever reason, Resonator Bank got a full screen update. I can only presume that this is for touchscreen on something like a Surface Pro sold by Windows there or Microsoft, where you can just like shove your fingers and move around stuff. Because as far as a mouse goes, there's no real difference with this and just doing it down here, in my opinion. But as we can see, not really any devices aside from just the Resonator Bank, the EQ5, the Spectrum, the Polysynth, and FM4 have gotten that update where they can full screen their main page. And Sampler, sorry, Sampler can do it as well. Speaking of FM4, it got a little bit of a rework. From what I can tell, there's been some colors added to help better differentiate between what is happening. And what's also nice about this is we can actually see the effects of our FM and what waveform we're getting afterwards without having to use any sort of oscilloscope. All right, thanks for watching this quick little video that we just did kind of on what's a little new. It's just like the full screen, the device selector, just some small changes with the voicing even. And next video, we're just gonna quickly look at phase 4. And yeah, thanks for watching.